Hey, Kim in the kitchen here, and this is a recipe called Mild to Wild Meatloaf. It's inspired because I had a craving for meatloaf, and part of that is, did you ever get gifted a cookbook, like a recipe book? And this is one my mom-in-law gave me, and I wish, I can't find a date on it, but there is a note. And normally she put dates on it, so I don't know how long I've had it. Maybe it was an engagement thing, but she called us kids, so I don't know that we were married yet. But what's really interesting about this, like some people, like all of my college books, like I kept pristine. I didn't even put a highlighter. This thing, I keep cramming in other recipes in there, and so I don't always use it exactly. But I will say it's one of the things my son, it's one of the things my son would like to inherit. So super cool. So the meatloaf is on page 208 under the beef and veal. And even though it's beef, we are going to be using wild elk. That was like walking around last week. If you're tender-hearted, keep scrolling. This recipe calls for 1.5 pounds of ground, 3 slices of bread, egg, milk, onion, Worcestershire, salt, mustard, pepper, sage, garlic, and chili sauce. And you mix everything together in a pan. You could do the 8.5 or 9 by 13. You put the catsup, right? Not the name brand. Got to be careful with that in a recipe book. You put that over the top for 1 to 1.5 hours at 350, about 8 servings. So today, not only are we going to do an 8.5 by 8.5, because this goes in what I call the adult easy bake oven, the air fryer. We're going to use this as our base, like that piece of paper, or like a dot on a piece of paper, but we're going to make it our own way. So using that as our guide, here's what we've got. So this is the elk, fresh harvest, ground. So it is elk. This has no extra fat. I did ask my husband when he was grinding it to not put in any fat or tallow. Now, when we're making it for burgers or something like that, we add, because it's so lean, it just falls apart. So you add some fat, sticky together. But we're gonna add a whole host of things, so less stickum is required. I am taking all of the unwanted bread ends, and that's what I'm going to use. So that's a great way to repurpose what your people are not already using in the fridge. We've got a farm fresh egg. This is, if you have a neighbor that has chickens, which we do across the street, thank you to our neighbor for farm fresh egg. That's also going to kind of help as a glue. Now, I was trying to figure out, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like a French toast or a strata. And I often wondered, like, if the pioneers, like, if they just needed to add more stuff to make the meal go farther. All of it could be true. So here's what I do know. We're gonna start with the pan. So a couple of things. You can either take some butter and smear it on the pan, right? To help it not stick, because this doesn't have fat. I use unsalted butter. Again, I might have referenced this before. My friend, Dr. Kaz, I really hadn't researched that much into butter. And even though you might like go to lengths to get, more organic, non-GMO cows that have been treated kindly, the ones that have salt, there's not the same kind of regulation in that butter for salt. Now, I don't know if that's true. Do your own fact checking. However, it made a lot of sense to me, and by being able to control how much salt I put in there, I kind of like that, because sometimes the salt is too salty, and often in baking, they do recommend using unsalted because it does change the chemical composition. So salt in hand. But here's something cool. We're gonna try this today. This is a cool little thing my friend gifted me. This is an oil sprayer. I will tell you, I do have one, and for anybody that is, in the pampered chef world, I've had this for a long time, but the seal is broken, and so it doesn't work. So I actually just need to find somebody, because supposedly this has a lifetime warranty. And this is one of these, you pump, pump, pump to generate some pressure and then it'll spray. But since the seal is broken, it doesn't do that. Or it doesn't do it very well. Let's see. Probably have to do it more than once. Oh, it's not too bad. It's kind of a weird fizzle. Well, at this point, it might be clogged. But what I like about this one, just in case, so Michelle La La Latte, thank you so much for this. This is a twofer, right? So this, you got a little handle, right? A little thing here, sprays out. It's great for when I'm sauteing, which I did with these peas that I'm putting into the meatloaf as well. But also, there's this nifty little switch that allows you pouring action. So I'm just going to use a spritz fixer because I know my hands are just going to be full of stuff anyway. All right, so there's that. I am new. I was curious about setting up an Amazon store because I've had quite a few people say, oh, what do you recommend, this and that. So if you're interested in that, let me know. You don't make a lot of money off that, right? You probably get like a quarter cup of coffee, but every little bit helps, so thanks. All right, so here's how we're gonna start. We have oiled our pan. Because I'm using the air fryer baking feature, I don't really need to give it a 15 or 20 minute warm up. Usually it's about 3 minutes on 400, so that'll be good for there. So the first thing I'm gonna do, because at this point we're mixing everything together, it does not matter the order. So I'm in the mood to chop, so I'm just gonna chop. This was recommending 3, so this is for 1.5 pounds, 3 bread crusts. One of them is bigger than the other. Oh, that one's one someone in the family would eat. So here we go. All right, what about like about this? You see that? Oh, look at that. That was in the way. What I like about this, it uses up all the stuff. Now you can either cut or you could tear it. I did not think about putting it into the food processor. But sometimes using the food processor is like, it happens so fast, but it's more work taking it out and cleaning it up. And I thought, yeah, we're just gonna chop. You could also just shred it, right? It's just like making croutons. One of the things that you could do with your mild to wild meatloaf, you could pre-season the bread. Because I am going to be seasoning the meatloaf itself, I'm not that interested. But what I mean by that is you could, just like making a crouton, you could toast this up, you could add some seasonings. All right, so we've chopped up the bread. And then I believe it calls for, right, this is just like a cup of milk. So I'm not going to do that yet. Let's see how much this weighs. You know, I usually just go like measure by the chart. Oh, did this give out? 563 grams, a pound and 3 ounces. Okay, so it might end up being more stuff, which is why I'm going to grab this other one. So one of the things too that's recently come up, depending on when you're watching this, if you're watching this on a replay years from now, things could be a lot different. But recently there is this thing about a class action lawsuit going on with a brand called Ziploc, and that's 110. So that's actually not bad. I'm going to take some of this one to make that pound and a half. Actually, I could do the whole thing and then have extra for burgers. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Yeah, this we're going to like Forrest Gump it. Now I probably should have used a way bigger bowl, but here we are. Okay. Meat. Carnivores. All right, and this probably means I want a second egg, but we're gonna do one. And I'm gonna add the peas, which I have gently warmed prior. I'm gonna add the green beans, which I gently warmed prior. Because I had this idea when I made this before, I suddenly craved it. Like, and you know when you have a craving for something, and then it's like all in. Oh my gosh, it was all in and game on. Okay, and we're just gonna measure with our heart, right? Do what you need. This is Celtic sea salt. And since there's really not, well, other than that other stuff. Okay, that looks good, that feels good. Trader Joe's black garlic. Sounds good. Garlic granules. I would have crushed fresh garlic, but actually sometimes if this gets a bit soupy, I want to control the texture with my seasonings. And I knew that I was not going to be putting this in a mixer. This is going to be mixed by hand. All right, favorite, Wizards Organic, gluten-free vegan, right? All the things. Worcestershire, but I gotta tell you, this is, I'm gonna add just a little water to it because we are at the end and we're gonna use it up. This is so good. And I like that it just doesn't have a bunch of crazy ingredients. It's Worcestershire, so I mean, it's probably just like all the things. All right, we've got that. Now you could either at this point, I like to add mustard. There's Dijon mustard. There's also mustard powder, which I do have somewhere in here. Mustard powder. But I'm gonna actually, because of the bread and where we're at with this, I'm gonna add the Dijon mustard. None of these tastes are gonna be clearly definitive, so it's kind of not that big a deal. All right. Most important, set that to the side. We are gonna chop. I like a good onion, so I'm gonna chop a whole onion in here. And I'm gonna put it in raw. I must say though, having wet hands is a bit, drying off the hands makes it easier to handle all of your equipment. So here we go. I had considered caramelizing the onions, and that would definitely be absolutely amazing in here. However, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get in this because I want it for dinner and I want it for lunch. I have some ideas. I thought about doing meatloaf week, like mild to wild meatloaf week, kind of like Shark Week. So, you know, what are the different ways to make it? Burritos, tacos for breakfast, as a sandwich, taking the base of this and making it into burger. That's what I had in mind. That's probably what we're gonna do. So it's interesting. Everybody has their own way of cutting and chopping it depending on what you're doing. So these don't have to be super small or fine, but you do want to use that claw technique, which I'm not doing perfectly, but it's enough for me. This is going to cook in the juices. You know, we're going to mix all of this together. So the onion is going to get translucent in the cooking process. When I made this before, I think it was, I put it in for a half hour and then I checked it, because with wild game, it doesn't have to be cooked all the way through. Hear me out if you're already thinking, it's safe, just like eating a steak tartare. First of all, we know where this meat came from. We also know that who butchered it and, you know, how it came to be and how it got processed. So totally fine with eating it rare. And definitely honor for anyone if that is not your cup. Totally fine. My son and I have a difference of opinion, anecdotal. he prefers a chop knife. I prefer a roll. It's like I like to do that. He prefers the kind where you gotta do that. So kind of interesting depending on your mood. If you're like in a more assertive mood, I'm not gonna say aggressive because sometimes that comes off as a bad thing. I don't really want that nut in there, but I will get as much out of it as possible. All right, so now, you see that? You see that? We got all of this goodness. I do not have, I probably should have kept it where it was. I don't have the milk in yet. And I am using almond milk, which it's not really milk. And the joke is because no one wants to call it nut juice. I'll let you figure that one out. Okay, so I'm not in a restaurant. I am serving it for me and my family, so I'm getting my hands all in here. I will say this is actually something really fun. If you have others and little people to get your hands in there. Now, you do not have to do the peas or the green beans. I just did that as a bonus. But here's the fun thing about that. Now that I got crap in my hands, I should have done the milk separate. Anyway, the reason why I did it, I was first craving that meatloaf because it had been a while. So for those that may or may not have known, I had been really sick right now. Even as you're watching this, if it's on a replay, I am recovering from surgery, from a life-threatening medical event. We survived, yay, fighting. And been on antibiotics for a hella long time. And like, truthfully, just the desire to eat and eating was an event every day itself. So finding things that were agreeable, that didn't compound feeling nauseous or sick, that also gave you energy, right? And I had this idea as I was making the meatloaf, like, meatloaf sounds really great. And then I was like, ooh, but that tater tot casserole. Now, I don't know if it's really tater tot casserole, but I remember having this dish where you cooked ground meat, you put like a mushroom or a cream sauce, and then it had peas in it, and you put tater tots on top. Well, I decided to make this a combo of that. Oh, it did not disappoint. All right, would one of you open the almond milk? Now, some of you would say, why didn't you put the milk in ahead of time? Because actually I like to put it in separate to get an idea of where my consistency is based on the thickness of the bread and all the other things I put in. All right, so now we get to wash our hands for the millionth time. Come with me. And it said about a cup. So this is what a cup looks like. Now, granted, we have 2x'd the recipe. One of the things why I like to use almond milk, and I'm not an affiliate for this, although it could be. I really do like this one. Organic. Now, for those that think organic's a sham, so be it. Also, it's almonds, but this one is just 3 ingredients. So it is, I can't find my right. It's 3 ingredients. And so again, oh yeah, one of the things, I was so happy to have found it because when I was on these really heavy antibiotics, I had to be really mindful of the calcium. And that's what was so important. All the milks are fortified with extra calcium. Well, I couldn't take my antibiotic. The recommendation from the specialist was 3 hours before or 3 hours after. So I got to really dial in on my nutrition and like when I ate stuff. And so then I'm like, I just wanted that little bit of, that taste of cream, that milky texture. And even all of the other, like rice milk, oat milk, hemp milk, cashew milk, they were all fortified. It's like, what the heck? And yes, I could have taken almonds. I know how to make my own nut milk. I'm recovering. I had just gotten out of the hospital. There was no time or energy for that. So, hand washing again. I got my leadership there. So, I was so happy to find there was something, right? In this day and age, what a blessing when you're in like not a usual state. Water, organic almond sea salt. Now, it doesn't say organic water, but I did not have to worry about the volume of calcium like I did before. All right, so here we are. I could taste this tartar, but I'm not gonna. What I am going to do though, is I'm gonna actually take half of this, I'm gonna put it in here, and then we're gonna smear. Now we have some options. Traditional meatloaf, depending where you're from. Now I would say like American style would be like to use some sort of ketchup. However, right, we can upgrade, right? It could be a combination of like ketchup and barbecue or a variety of other barbecue sauces. You could even put more mustard on top, whatever floats your boat. I would definitely add something to it because the first batch that I made, it was like the first thing I baked in like 3 months. And so yeah, there was char. However, not all char is bad. I did end up putting some sauce on top and let it sit in the fridge overnight, and it did kind of break it up. And so kind of like if you know anybody that enjoys like the burnt marshmallow, like char is not always bad. Sometimes, you know, it's used very strategically for the taste buds. So mild to wild meatloaf elk episode. Ooh, this looks amazing. All right, this is going to be so good. And I think, very messy. It's actually not messy, but had I planned this differently, I wouldn't have to wash my hands so much. I'd have some stuff on already, but whatever. Okay, so now this, what I might do in the next version is I might take a thin layer, line the bottom, add a layer of something in between, like most people might think cheese, but maybe I do like some really good like chili peppers, like bell peppers that have been sauteed. I could do a combination. Could do bacon, and then put another layer on top, right? Like a stack, kind of like a meat lasagna, but no noodles. The other thing we'll be trying is for mild to wild meatloaf week. Ooh, wouldn't these be tasty as a meatball? So we're gonna try that. And I do wanna see how these patty up as a meatloaf burger. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so let's see. We are plugged in and we didn't start the air fryer yet. Yeah, it kind of doesn't matter. Let's go with it. Let's unplug you here. Let's take you with me. Right, here's a little air fryer. So we were gonna make the big version, right? You see that? But I changed my mind. So, all right, we are gonna put this. This is not too heavy. It's not too heavy. We're gonna put it on the middle shelf. And now we're gonna, let's see. This has a bunch of settings on here. French fries, chicken. I'm gonna say by default, the chicken is the closest, but we're gonna do 350 and we're gonna do 25 minutes and then we're gonna check it. All right, thanks for making mild to wild meatloaf with me. We'll see you soon. Make a note in the comments. What would you add to make this recipe yours? Ooh, and for anybody that's like, you know, working out, I will figure out the portion and protein ratio so that you can get your strength training on. Okay.